Welcome to the Blue Raider Podcast. I'm your host, Jake Bolden. Today is Tuesday, December 12th, and I'm excited about our first episode. And today my first guest is from MTSU Sidelines. He is an editor, writer, reporter for the student-led digital news source MTSU Sidelines. It is Calvin White. Calvin, how you doing, man?
Good, Jake. How are you?
Not too bad myself. Anything exciting happening this week in MTSU athletics you'd like to talk about?
Did anything exciting happen? Too many exciting things happened in 1 week.
Right, and I'll say this as an outsider who's not necessarily around the university as much as you are. I'm impressed with your omniscience. I saw your tweets on Wednesday talking about how you did the press conference with the new coach Mason, and then you had a final, and then you made the road trip all the way down to Knoxville.
Yeah, so we go in Wednesday morning, and it was a little kind of more tiring because we had a basketball game the night before. So we go in for Chris Massaro and President McPhee to introduce Derek Mason as the new head football coach on Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. And I walk in, and I was talking to Chip Walters, the MTSU football, basketball, radio play-by-play guy. He goes, "Calvin, how are you?" I said, "Tired, Chip. How are you?" He goes, "Tired, too." I said, this was like 7:30. We got there about 7:30 or 8. I said, "I have to wait for the bookstore to open so I can go get a Scantron to take my final at 12 after this." And he goes, "You might be the only person in this entire room with that specific set of circumstances." I was like, "Well, Chip, that's what you got to do, unfortunately." I had to go take a mass media law final exam a couple hours after we talked to Derek Mason and Chris Massaro, and that's why I didn't get to post quotes as quickly as I would have liked. I had to go study for my final.
Well, that's I said I was extremely impressed because I think for most of us the news was kind of thrown on us Tuesday night at the basketball game, and we're trying to swallow the pill of good news, bad news, and we'll have a time here in just a bit to talk about whether that's good news or bad news for MTSU. But what is your impressions from Wednesday?
I love the hire. I think he's a personality that will be good to kind of rejuvenate the fan base and give MTSU football something that it hasn't had in a long time. He's very familiar with this area. He's been in this area a long time, was at Vanderbilt for a long time. He's got good recruiting ties here. I don't know if you saw the Twitter post on Friday, but between Wednesday and Friday, him and the staff had already been to 59 high schools in the mid-state area. They've already thrown out a couple offers to some guys from the Murfreesboro area. And, that gets everybody worked up too because, Rick Stockstill famously or infamously wasn't known for recruiting the Murfreesboro area. Derek Mason throwing out those couple offers early has already gotten everybody excited. But the only people that aren't excited about it are the people that look strictly at win-loss. Derek Mason was winning 5, 6, 7 games a year at Vanderbilt. One of the hardest coaching jobs in the country. And, that first year he inherited that Vanderbilt rape case that was going on. So he had that on top of trying to win football games at Vanderbilt. So, whenever he went to Auburn and Oklahoma State to be a defensive coordinator, he was good there. He was good in the NFL. He was good when he was at Stanford with Jim Harbaugh. And I'm excited. The only thing I'm not excited about is I won't be there next season to watch it. I'm going to graduate in May. But I love the hire.
I'm glad you bring all those points up about how difficult it is for him to coach at Vanderbilt. I think my instant reaction of the news is when you compare his job at Vanderbilt to any other job in the country, he doesn't have the resources. He doesn't have the department that backs him up, and it's a hard place to recruit because of all the academic standards. If you remove the latter excuse for him, all those excuses are very similar to the same excuses Rick Stockstill had. It's that he didn't have the administrative backing. He didn't have the facilities to be able to compete in the league he's in. So I don't consider myself an optimist necessarily, or I'm not too much of a pessimist. There's plenty worse out there, believe me. But I think I'm hesitant to be too excited about it because not from Derek Mason's standpoint of view, but where's the administration stand? And I think if you're not blind, you can see that this university can succeed. And there's a lot of things that are happening that can get a coach who's looking to bounce back, get really excited about those changes. But my biggest concern is not Derek Mason. My concern is the athletic department. Are they willing to back the guy? Are they willing to give him the resources necessary to be successful? Because if we're being frank, everything that got Rick Stockstill fired was not Rick Stockstill's fault, right?
Yeah.
From that perspective, I'm excited just to see what the university is going to do for the head coach. But as far as the details go, because I know this was news to me until Cecil Joyce reported on the DNJ, it's a 5-year, $5 million contract. That's about around the ballpark where Stockstill was, and I think a lot of us were concerned about how are we able to pay Stockstill and pay a new coach. And to shift gears here a little bit, is what program he is inheriting. You kind of heard him touch on that at the press conference. What are kind of some things that he's given you about what to expect from his side moving forward?
Well, Wednesday when they announced the hire, he told us that Tuesday night they met with the team, and he told them that it wasn't about like deconstructing the team. It was about taking what they had and getting where they want to be. And I mean, there's a lot of guys that were productive this year that are still on the roster. They haven't hit the portal yet. But from what I've seen, I haven't got to talk to any of the guys that are still on the team yet. But from everything we've seen, it looks like, I mean, if you look at the pictures that like the athletic department has posted on the Twitter and stuff, it looks like the guys that still are in that room are very excited to have him there.
I think one thing that stood out to me is it's been 19 so far that are in the transfer portal, is that since the hire has taken place, we haven't seen any more names enter that portal, which I think is promising, like you touch on. And I don't know necessarily if we'll see any more, but I want to see if he decides to hit the recruiting trail more from the high school, junior college, new guys that are moving into Division I, or if he plans to hit the portal hard and find guys within Division I and bring them here, which tends to be the common move. But you saying the words that he's not going to deconstruct, he's not going to go full Deion Sanders, I think is good news for us, because in a league like this, continuity is vital to your success.
And I don't know personally what he is going to do as far as staff wise. It was announced that he's going to get a $1.7 million pool to build a staff, and it was announced that he hired Kendall Simmons to be the new offensive line coach. Kendall Simmons had been an analyst at Auburn since Gus Malzahn was there. He was an All-American offensive lineman at Auburn when he played. Won 2 Super Bowls with the Steelers when Big Ben was there. Everything I've seen said that it was a great first hire. That's the only staff hire that's been announced so far. But as far as anybody else, who he's kept or let go, I don't know as far as that.
Right. I haven't heard any news on Mitch Stewart, offensive coordinator, or Schaefer, the defensive coordinator. I do think we could see some shakeup there. But again, being that we're already a week past the hire at the time of this production, that they're there to stay. I wouldn't see any reason for you to hit the recruiting trail and have your coordinators up in the air. One thing I did have us talk about here is the all-conference selections came out this last week for Conference USA. We have quite a few names on there, and I'm not necessarily going to go through all of them, but revert back to our talk on the transfer portal. We've got 9 guys that are on the first, second, or honorable mention of the all-conference selections. 4 of the 8 are already in the portal, and then we have Trey Fluellen, who's going to be entering the NFL draft. Is that something that, as a program, a new coach, should we be concerned about? 4 of your considerably 8 most talented players are leaving.
I don't think so, just because a lot of those guys had been at MTSU 4 or 5 years, and I'm a big believer that players, most of the players anyway, don't necessarily commit to schools; they commit to coaches. And with Rick Stockstill gone, and with those guys being here 4 or 5 years, a lot of them I would assume just wanted a bigger opportunity to maybe make the NFL or play on a bigger stage and play in some other professional league. Like guys like Marley Cook and Zaylen Wood, as soon as they hit the portal, they were racking up those P5 offers. Marley Cook cut his top 3 to like Miami and Ohio State and I think Tennessee, maybe. I
Mhm.
forget. But, I think Zaylen Wood hit the portal the day of or the day after it was announced Coach Stockstill was fired, and he was committed to Vanderbilt, 2 or 3 days after that. So a lot of those guys go fast. And, Jacoby Thomas is racking up those P5 offers right now. He's crystal balled to his crystal ball says Ole Miss right now. But, a lot of those guys I would assume just wanted a bigger opportunity with Rick Stockstill gone.
I think that's just the nature of being a G5 school is when you develop these players, if they are capable of going to those P5s, they're more than likely going to take those opportunities. It's just the nature of it. It's what makes a coach here at this level stand out is what they can do with less. Because those guys, as you're saying, just they get developed and they get swept on. And I think basketball is another great example of that. We see, two of your top five performers last year. One goes to the G League and one goes to to Texas A&M. So it's just a nature of it. I'm not anywhere close to concerned about the team because, as we've already touched on, I think the talent is out there and it's up to Mason to find those guys and develop them. But with that, I would have to say I still think a winning season should be an expectation for us, especially with us returning Vadiato for what feels like his 500th year, but he'll be back under center, presumably, assuming nothing happens between now and next August. I feel good about it. I know that there's, again, enough talent within the skill positions that we can recruit those guys, at least to Conference USA levels, but I think 6-7 wins is still a reasonable expectation for this program.
Yeah, and that's what Derek Mason mentioned when he talked about recruiting the Murfreesboro area very hard. He said he wanted to go out and let those guys know that, because there's a lot of Murfreesboro kids that get those high major P5 offers, and he told us he wanted to make it a point to them that, they can stay home and play at MTSU, and that there's examples of guys in the league that went that route, not necessarily from Murfreesboro, but you look at guys like Kevin Byard, and who's a Pro Bowler. He's been an All-Pro. Reed Blankenship, who's leading the NFC strong safety Pro Bowl voting right now. And Reed kind of bust on the scene last year. Charvarius Ward, who won a Super Bowl with the Chiefs a couple years ago. Aaron Brewer, who won a Super Bowl with the Rams a couple years ago. Guys have gone that route and come to MTSU and made it to the league. And Derek Mason wanted to make it a point to them that they can go that route and still achieve their dreams and stay home.
I don't see any reason why we can't develop talent here and get them to the next level because this is an attractive place to be. I mean, we're in the Nashville market. I still see this as a valuable place for guys. And gosh, with the talent that is looming in the area, I mean, if you can tell them that you get to stay home and most importantly compete for championships, I don't see any reason why guys don't pick this place over other G5. I can see within reason why those guys would move on to bigger, better things. But for the most part, coming out of high school, we have plenty of talent in the mid-state that I don't think it's inexcusable that it's not recruited at least looked at. Because in the past 18 years, I couldn't tell you that these guys have ever gotten a look. To shift our conversation over to basketball now, we had a huge week, Lady Raiders. Anyone that made the trip down to Huntsville, you got to witness quite a basketball game.
Yeah, so entering Wednesday, in 15 career matchups, MTSU women's basketball had never beaten Tennessee. And, a lot of those matchups were when Pat Summitt was there and they were a national powerhouse running through everybody not named Gina Wariema and Tar Vanderveer. But, we expected that Rakia Jackson was still going to be out for Tennessee. She's only played in, I think, 2 games this season, but she's a projected top 10 WNBA draft pick. And then we get there on Wednesday, and we learned that Tennessee's starting center, Jillian Hollingstead, was in concussion protocol. So Tennessee's playing with the backup center, and anybody that watches women's basketball knows that every game you have to wonder what version of Anastasia Boldreva you're going to get. Are you going to get that version that's been dominant most of the season, or are you going to have that occasional game she plays where she goes back to how she's played the last 2 seasons, where she goes in there and she's soft and she gets pushed around? You can't get pushed around against Tennessee if you want to win. So They go in there. She has a good game. I think she had 17, 9 rebounds, 7 blocks. She was a rebound and 3 blocks away from the third triple double in MTSU women's basketball history. Jalen Gregory didn't have a great first half, and then she comes out in the second half and just lights it up. I've watched her for 3 years, and it still amazes me when people are shocked when they leave her open and the ball goes through the hoop. If you give her time to check the wind on a 3-point attempt that's going to go in, you might as well just run back down the court and play offense. But Tennessee does not look like Tennessee right now. I think they're 5-5 right now, but there's a lot of people that are not happy with Kelly Harper right now.
Yeah, she's certainly on the chopping block, and for whatever reason, MTSU seems to be the one that's kind of pushing her off that ledge, and it's confusing, really. If anyone knows sports and knows mid-state basketball, MTSU is the perennial power, everything west of Knoxville. So for us to win a game like that, it is huge for the program, but when you look back at that game, and I know they're missing 2 top players at UT, but you have to think that was just the better basketball team that won that game. I think from start to finish, it was close there even, but we were able to get our sets on offense. We were able to get that down pin on Tennessee, get Jalen wide open on the world's slowest developing 3-point play, but for whatever reason, it always seems to work. And, credit to her, she always knocks it down. And I have noted that in that game, she scores 22 points with 5 threes and ties her season high with 5. As someone who is an avid Lady Raider basketball fan, this team just rolls when Jalen rolls. And I say that because in the loss to Belmont last week, she only scores 5 on 2 of 7 shooting. I don't think it's a coincidence that a player that averages this season 11, but I think careers 13 points, 15 points, when she's 10 points off her average, we lose a game by 14 points. It's, she is an engine that goes. And you could say the same about Anastasia. You could say the same about Savannah Wheeler. If they're not going, the team's not going. But I think Jalen more than anything, because she gets the scoring. We have 4 threats on the floor with Courtney. She just opens the floor up for everybody. So, and even to rebound off of that, she scores 25 in the Sunday game against Tennessee Tech. And you see where they're playing physical defense. You're able to set those screens. She utilizes those off-ball screens well to get open shots, and she knocks them down. And this team is just too tough to beat when you leave her wide open like that.
Yeah, because there are games where it seems like Jalen's the only one that can hit a shot from outside. Savannah Wheeler's always going to have games where she'll have 4 points at halftime, and then she'll end up with 12 or 14 just because she gets to the rim so easily and she gets knocked around and shoots a lot of free throws. Courtney Whitson's the same way, but Courtney Whitson's the straw that stirs the drink, if you will. Nothing they do runs the way it does without Courtney. And, Courtney's been a dominant rebounder for all 5 years she's been at MTSU. She broke the record Sunday but it starts in total. She started 132 consecutive games, and it's kind of ironic because today was the worst game I've seen her play in a long time. But when Jalen's hitting shots, you have to overplay her. And when you overplay her, she can get to that second, third level, score at the rim. And when you have to help over, she can find other people on the perimeter, or it opens up that high-low action they like to run where they can throw it down to Anastasia and she can go to work and get some easy buckets.
Yeah, it seems like the offense the last 2 games have been a well-oiled machine, and it's promising. It looks promising, given that Belmont game. That had to be probably one of the worst games I had seen that team play collectively. But I also think that was a recipe where Belmont played the best game they've played all year and we played the worst. And on the road, those just don't mix very well. We'll turn our attention over to the boys basketball. They've had an up and down week, if you will. I think the Tuesday night game against Missouri State, overtime win against a very good Missouri State team for that matter, a team that actually avenged a 20-plus point loss from a season ago. We see King pour in 22 points. We see JCJ, Jared Coleman-Jones, kind of get his feet underneath him with 14 points, 9 rebounds. But then we go into Saturday's game against Belmont. What's the difference between the two? Those two guys seem to be, again, the ones that apply the most pressure on the offensive end, and they still did it on Saturday. But, what are you seeing that just doesn't give? Why are we playing so bad when our top players are playing so well?
Well, the the Missouri State game was probably the first game since the opener against Northern Kentucky where they actually consistently hit shots throughout the game. They made 12 3-pointers. And when they're making shots, it's a totally different team because now you have to actually guard them on the 3-point line, and it opens up those lanes for them to drive or dump it down to Jared. But when they've not made shots a lot more often than they have made shots, and when they don't make shots, it's ugly because you're driving on top of each other. You end up shooting bad shots because you're frustrated. You don't rebound it very well, and you know what happened yesterday against Belmont. You take a lot of bad shots. Bad shot is the first pass in your opponent's fast break. But against Belmont, back-to-back possessions, Jalen Jordan and Justin Buford, MTSU makes one pass up the court, and a three's going in the air with 3 or 4 Belmont guys standing under the basket, and there's one MTSU guy in the front court shooting a bad shot. And when there's 3 or 4 Belmont guys in the back court to grab the rebound, and they can just sprint it right up the court for a layup, you're just hurting yourself. And Jared's whole thing all season has been that he can't defend without fouling, and he turns it over a ton. Jared's had a couple games where he turns it over 5, 6, 7 times. And we've talked to Nick McDevitt about this too. That early in the season, they tried to run a lot of that action at the top of the key where Jared handles the ball like they did with DeAndre Dishman. And Jared just doesn't look comfortable doing it. A lot of his turnovers early came from him handling the ball, trying to rip it and go to the rim. He would lose the ball or dribble it off his leg, or somebody would steal it from him. And he's just not comfortable doing that. But they like to run a lot of stuff where it's a lot of backdoor cuts, a lot of pin down stuff. But to open that stuff up, you have to have Jared handle the ball at the top of the key. So right now they're just in the middle of trying to figure out what works on offense, what gets us open shots, and when you do get the open shot, you got to make it. And Jalen Jordan's really been helpful in that department. He only had 7 Belmont, but the couple games before that, he had been kind of that microwave off the bench. Had I think 22 in the last game of the tournament they played in the Bahamas against Kansas City, and then he had a good outing against Missouri State, but only 7 against Belmont. But it just boils down for men's basketball. They got to make shots, and they got to keep opponents out of the paint. They can't keep anybody out of the paint right now.
Yeah, I think the depth of center is really showing now that we've seen Josh go down with an apparent knee injury. I haven't heard anything officially from the university in regards to his status. However, last night we see that he's on crutches, so it doesn't look promising. And really, when you look at the roster, we've got 2 true centers. You got JCJ, and then you've got Chris Loof, who looks promising in the Saturday night game against Belmont. He scores 12 points. I believe he gets 5 rebounds. And there's a situation in the second half where JCJ is battling foul trouble, which is very typical for him. So you need a second guy like that to step up when Josh is down. But with Loof, we've seen in the past prior to Saturday night where he's kind of a deer in the headlights with the basketball. When he gets that ball, he doesn't necessarily know what to do. It's almost like he's not patient with the ball. But again, I can't say too much because Saturday night it seems to have flipped the script on what we know of Chris Loof as a center. Moving forward, I think just from the basketball team, it lacks consistency. And I know that we've had injuries, but we're getting to the point now where we're getting closer to conference play. We have to find some sort of offensive scheme that works for us. And I see Nick playing with it. I see Nick trying to get those open shots that you're referring to. But outside of King, I don't know that there's anyone that's too reliable. I am concerned about the offense. I'm concerned about the trend of the team at the moment because, as we know, Conference USA is is by no means a cakewalk. We go into it as a preseason favorite. I get it. We lose our star point guard, but I don't see a situation where we should be falling off this far. I know that we've had close finishes here at home, and I have to think to myself that we're losing these from being outcoached. I think of situations like UAB where we decide to throw the ball off of the back on an inbounds. Now, granted, if that was a decision made by Porter or if that was a coaching decision, I don't know. But at the end of the day, like, I just feel like we've gotten in these close game situations where we don't have a game plan other than Justin Porter at the top of the key. We're going to put him in isolation, hope he gets down, kick the ball out. It feels like we lack some sort of structure in close basketball games.
A lot of those close games, you get to the final play of the game and the other team just defends it well. Nick told us after that UAB game when Porter tried to throw it off the guy's back and turns it over, that wasn't the play, obviously.
Right.
But he said that had the ball under the basket, called a timeout. They came out, got in the set. Andy Kennedy calls timeout. They come back out in the same set. And Nick told us post game that basically like the third or fourth option of the same play. So UAB had defended all of the looks they were trying to get, and they were out of timeouts. The end of it was just Porter just trying to make a play. If nobody's open, you can't lose the game because you stood there and got a 5-second call. You got to try and do something. And then it's slipping my mind right now the game, but the game they were down, I think it was 2, with a couple seconds left, and they had to go the full length of the court, and they throw it to Jacob Johnson basically at the free throw line they were inbounding the ball at, and he tries to sling it down the court. And
Western Carolina, the game you're thinking of.
Yeah. He tries to throw it down the court and throws it to nobody, and everyone's in the comment section of the final score graphic like, oh, what a stupid play. No, the other team just defends the play well. When, not everybody's Bobby Knight, Not everybody can just pull a game-winning play out of their back pocket. There's a lot of the times there's nothing you can do about good defense.
It's just situations like that where I feel like, and again, the game escapes me, but I feel like if we're able to get a timeout, get a play call in, I feel like we shouldn't be so hesitant. Some days we have the answer, and some days we don't have the answer. And when we schedule such a hard non-conference schedule like we do, you got to pull those games out. But I will say this: I think playing games like this will do this team well going into January, February, especially in March.
You'd hope so, because by the time this comes out on Tuesday, Tuesday night they have to go to St. Mary's, who just beat a top 15 team in Colorado State on Saturday. And St. Mary's isn't what they have been in the last couple of years, but outside of Gonzaga, they've been the premier program in the West Coast Conference for the last 20 years. They're always tough. If Sean Miller and Matt Painter didn't exist, Randy Bennett's probably the best coach in the country to not make it to a Final Four yet.
You give us a chance at a game like that on the road?
They're going to have to make shots. I know that sounds like beating a dead horse. That kind of sounds like basketball for dummies. You got to throw it in the hole to be able to score. You have to be able to score, and you got to keep guys out of the paint. I looked it up last night for my Belmont story. All 6 games they've lost, they've given up at least 38 points in the paint. And even when they win, they give up a high number of points in the paint. Because you look at games like Western Carolina with Vontarius Woolbright. Vontarius Woolbright, to begin with, he's not your typical modern basketball player. He's 6'7", doesn't shoot a lot of threes, and he gets all of his production under the free throw line. And that's what he did all night. And he's the primary ball handler. And that's what Nick said, too, after the game. Woolbright gets, I think it was 20-something points, and he had double-digit rebounds and a lot of assists, and he never felt like he was hogging the ball. He just had it in the middle of the floor every time, and he got where he wanted to go every time. And against Belmont, they run a lot of that same pin down action that MTSU runs. They ran it basically the entire first half for Jacoby Gillespie to go get a layup anytime he wanted to. And even when he didn't get a layup, he got fouled. They just couldn't stop it. The only good thing they did defensively against Belmont was they held Cade Tyson to 10 points. And I don't even think Cade Tyson got the chance to shoot it a lot because he was in foul trouble. Jacoby Gillespie killed him in the first half, and then Malik Dia killed him in the second. They can't stop anybody right now.
Right. And back to the St. Mary's game, you're going to play a team that is very guard heavy. They can score it from all three levels. They're able to get downhill like you talk about. I mean, when we talk about guys like Mahaney, you talk about a guy with a ridiculous long name, Marco Linionis, whatever his name is, the guys that are averaging nearly 10, 15 points a game. That's what they're capable of doing. We have to find a way to stop the high ball screen, go over those screens, and be able to have the help defense behind them. But then down low, you've got guys like Saxon and Jefferson. Saxon's an experienced guy who is able to get offensive boards, create second chance opportunities for the Gales. But I think if there was ever a year for us to catch a St. Mary's slip, it's this year. It seems that they've turned it around. They've got a big road win with Colorado State, but this is a team that came out top 25, and now they're staring down the barrel of 5-5. So they're definitely a team that is a mystery, much like our own. I just have to feel that they're obviously going to have the benefit of the doubt being on their floor all the way across the country. Gosh, it'd be a heck of a win for Nick McDevitt and this program if they can pull that one out.
Yeah, and even if they do lose, we'll get the chance to see how they respond to getting punched in the mouth a little bit. Obviously you're going on the road to face the team that won I believe they won the West Coast Conference last year, the regular season. But, you got to go on the road and play a perennial top 25 team in America. They've had, this is going to sound bad, but they've had plenty of chances to respond to getting punched in the mouth early. They lost that first game in the Bahamas by 30, lost the next game to Ohio by 10 or 12, I think, and then won that third game against Kansas City, who's legitimately one of the worst teams in college basketball. So, I mean, it's all about how you respond. And they've got, I believe it's 4 non-con games left. You got to figure something out before you get to conference play, because Conference USA is tough.
I think you hit the nail on the head right there with no holds barred. I mean, this is a team that we expect to be trending upwards. We have injuries, we have excuses, but you've got to win basketball games. And I think it all boils down to, like you said, this team's got to score, and we have the energy on defense, but we got to score. To move lastly to upcoming games, women, they play Stephen F. Austin at home on Sunday the 17th. They also, for those that are going, it is a cookie cutter giveaway. I know my wife is extremely excited about that promotion. But they were going to play a good Stephen F. Austin team. It's the first CUSA WAC Challenge game. Stephen F. Austin is a 13 seed according to ESPN Charlie Cream's bracketology. I think one thing that stands out again about the tough non-conference schedule these girls have is this is potentially the 4th tournament team they're going to face this year.
Yeah, and I mean that's what Rick does. Rick Insel loads the non-con every year because he knows that at the end of the season they're not going to get the recognition he thinks they should have because they're not your typical P5 team. And, just in case they don't win the conference tournament, you have to have those wins on your resume so the committee looks at you and says, hey, you might be a good tournament team. Now, credit, they've lost some of those games, but they've kept a lot of them close. Princeton was a winnable game that slipped away from them. I believe lost that one by 2 or 3, but Princeton's really good. Michigan handled them for a little bit, and then they made a run to make that one a little bit more respectable. Beat DePaul, beat Memphis twice, just beat Tennessee. But the way Tennessee's trending right now, who knows if they'll make the tournament.
I will say that playing this team, you talk about getting those wins that are big for resume builders. Stephen F. Austin, they're kind of in that same boat. I mean, they're a team that they're going to be a top 80, top 70 in RPI when the season's done, and that's really just by virtue of their conference schedule that kind of does down their strength of schedule. We see them on Saturday, the 9th, where they take on Alabama. They lose a 5-point game on the road in Tuscaloosa. So this is a team that is looking for those marquee wins, and a road win at MTSU would certainly be one of those. So I think this is a game that maybe you look at the schedule. If you don't know much about women's basketball, you think Stephen F. Austin, that's not much on our schedule. But I can assure you, for those that'll be in Murphy Center on the 17th, that we have a good team rolling in here. They've got a post that can match Anastasia just like our own. She averages 18 points, 8 rebounds. So this is a good basketball team that's going to come in here and test these Lady Raiders.
Yeah, and you got to get as many of these non-conference wins as you can, because Conference USA on the women's side it's not that great, to be honest. Western Kentucky's good, but the expectation is that MTSU rolls. I mean, they were the unanimous first place preseason selection for a reason. The expectation from the voters and the fans and Rick Insell and the players, the expectation is NCAA tournament, and that's what he tells girls when he recruits them. If you want to play in the NCAA tournament, come here. Jalen Gregory said that a lot. She said that was one of the reasons she came to MTSU. Courtney Whitson's been to 2 NCAA tournaments. I believe Jada Graham is too. They've got players with that tournament experience, and after getting rolled by Colorado in the tournament last year, that's all they talk about most of the games is how do we get back to the tournament? How do we win games in the tournament?
Excellent conversation with you today, Calvin. Covered a lot of bases, especially the big one with football. But Calvin, before we sign off now, let the people know where they can find you on social media.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter or X, whatever we're calling it, at CalvinWhite55, and you can find all of my work at MTSUSidelines.com.
Excellent. And, of course, you can always find him. He's the redhead media row. You can't miss him. He's there at every basketball game. So that's all for now, folks. I appreciate it, and we'll catch you next time.